It was not like a thought, but it was like this implicit kind of grokking recognition.
It was all very, very impersonal until I got to the space where I realized that I was in the area where souls await rebirth. And I was there, and I had been there so many times before. I recognized it, and this incredible transcendent peace came over me. I have never in my life ever felt such peace. Everything was stripped away. Every hope, every fear, every attachment to the material world was completely stripped out of me. I was free to just be the essence of a soul.
After the medicine wore off, there is that familiar sensation of kind of coming back into the body. And I do remember that. That was part of almost all of those experiences of kind of coalescing back into sensory awareness and a sense of having a body and of that becoming a little more substantial. And then say, oh yeah, here I am. And I live in a body and I'm okay.
So Laura removes the eye shades. And I ask, not really with my eyes open quite yet, I ask, how long was I gone? Because I needed to know. And Rick chimes in like 15 minutes. For a moment, I'm shocked. I'm like, you know, mind, has to try to catch up because now the whole cognitive dissonance of the experience has to catch up. I was gone for 15 minutes. 1,000 years of experience in 15 minutes. Well, to say the least, it was profound. It was profound.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing what a human being can experience in a hospital bed. I mean, they can experience almost the whole universe. You know, life, death, everything in between.
This is not some recreational thing, and I don't believe anybody should enter this lightly. It is life transformative. It will perhaps shake you enough to realize, you know, that you need to be awake to the fact that you don't know, and that is the beginning of starting to know.
What we see here is such a tiny part of what is real. I get really frustrated because, of course, there's no way to prove that where I went was deep space, that I encountered, you know, other entities, other life forms that exist in this universe. At some point, maybe our civilization will become advanced enough and we will throw off these anchors of impossible thought, that these things are impossible, that it's not, you know, that everything that exists where we can see it.
I wrapped up the studies in '95 and really just had to take a break for a couple of years. I was aware of a growing sense of discomfort with what I was doing because I just couldn't explain it. And it seemed to me if I couldn't model and explain what was going on that I was doing and just, you know, bringing people to the edge of these kinds of experiences, it seemed like I ought to. That it was a little irresponsible to be sort of pushing people off the cliff like that without really knowing exactly what it was and accepting and understanding and feeling comfortable with that model. And, you know, I think what began dawning on me after a while once I stopped the study was that I was really dealing with a spiritual phenomenon.
What do these experiences say about the nature of reality, the nature of our minds, or the function of our brain that we can so quickly shift into these alternate realities? Let's take a step back and consider how these experiences inform us about ourselves, our consciousness, and the symbiosis of the two.
It started seeming to me that what was happening with DMT, particularly with respect to some of these reports of entering parallel or alternate or freestanding parallel sorts of realms of existence is that indeed was what their consciousness was doing. The chemistry of their brain, which is the organ of consciousness, was being changed by DMT in such a way that they could then receive information that we weren't able to receive normally.
Yes, there's the experiences from DMT and ayahuasca, and they have their function. But if we'll also look at what it enables us to see,
it just rips that filtering mechanism away for a few minutes, and for a few minutes you're immersed in sort of this raw data sphere of input, of sensory input, of memories, of associations. I mean, it seems like the brain builds reality out of these things, what you're experiencing, what you have experienced, and how you associate and synthesize these things together to tell yourself a story, essentially, about what's going on, where you are in space and time.
It's the brain that helps us to process all this information and to create for us a rendition of what our world is all about. But we're trapped within that brain. However, in spiritual experiences where people feel that they get beyond the self, in certain types of psychedelic experiences where you have incredible sensory and other types of phenomena, people really feel like they are able to kind of get outside of their brain. We have to take a very big look at what is going on within them when they have the experience and try to understand how it happens physiologically and try to make sense of it from the subjective perspective as well as from the objective perspective. I don't think you can just say, let's just explain it away on the basis of science.
What I was doing early on when I was hearing these reports were interpreting them, calling them psychological or brain chemistry aberrations or whatever, that there was a part of the brain that was being dinged that was responsible for the alien appearance phenomenon.
This is not a new phenomenon. Entities in altered states, have been recognized for an extremely long time in many cultures over the millennia. Helpers, spirit assistants, angels, all of these different entities have been fairly common throughout man's experience of altered states and through much of man's mythology.
I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that people are in some way interacting with some sort of an intelligence or sentient being or something that exists at some level that's not in this three-dimensional physical plane.
I'm looking at it from a sense of, okay, is the drug healing you? Is it helping you? Or is it giving you the tools? What are you bringing back? What you bring back, I think, has to be something more than there are these entities out there. The best psychedelic explorers are people who realize that even the truths they see on a trip are not truths, but new models, new what-ifs, alternative frames.
unless there is a map and a clear methodology, then one will just have a variety of different experiences. All these various experiences that have been reported from NDEs, near-death experiences, alien abductions, alien encounters, sexual ecstasy, I believe all of these experiences, in fact, are fractals. If we understand the concept of fractal geometry, no matter how small it is, it contains everything that is in the larger picture. And thus, that validates profoundly all these various experiences.
Discount the phenomenon as hallucinatory or imaginary. I think it's maybe more useful to look at a mechanism of action. You know, if it is real, then perhaps how does it work?
Look, there's extraordinarily regular phenomena that come up with these things that are clearly linked in many ways to these larger human issues around mysticism or religious experience or encounters with other entities. And here we have it. And if you can't go in there and really go in there and account for this material inside your neuroscientific framework, you're leaving a huge gap. You got to account for this stuff the way you got to account for dreams, the way you got to account for all sorts of psychoactive responses.
Using DMT as an explanatory model, as kind of the mediator between our consciousness and the consciousness of a non-corporeal sort of reality, you know, it's handy.
With DMT, there are no words. I would try to wrap mathematical vocabulary around the experience afterwards. I specialized in the metaphor of vibration and how vibrations in fluids created form in fluid, and that would be the key to the relationship between the spiritual realm and the ordinary realm. This was the window that was opened by DMT.
Using psychedelic drugs or other types of pharmacological substances can help to induce a state where people feel that they touch a deeper sense of reality, where they understand reality on a more fundamental level, and they gain a great deal of insight and knowledge into the ways in which the world works and how they are, as a human being, supposed to relate to that world.
DMT is somehow, it seems to me in my experience, more of a breakthrough than LSD, mushrooms, peyote, and so on. It's instructive. It's more supportive of future evolution and the creation of the future. And it is, in itself, more of a mystery. How could this little stuff produce something that has intelligence? You know, that is actually a doorway to another reality.
So what is the nature of reality, and what is the nature of how we as human beings experience it? Can we understand it better? Are we capable of understanding reality on some very fundamental levels? And what do we need to do in order to prepare for that?
You know, there are parallel universes, it seems, at least that's a theory in modern physics. There is dark matter, which is a huge amount of the matter of the universe, maybe 95% or more. As radical an idea, it's just a logical extension in some ways of, instead of using a machine to see more than we normally can see, we're using the brain.
There are fields which are undiscovered so far, which have nothing to do with anything that is discovered so far. The gravitational field, you know, was unknown before the year 1604. The electromagnetic fields, unknown before the year 1830 or something. All of these, what we call the fundamental fields of mathematical physics, are new discoveries. Dark energy is also even newer discovery, and beyond that are maybe more discoveries yet coming beyond our cosmos itself, in higher dimensions, as they say.
I still don't have very much use for the concept of God, but I do believe that there are higher levels, transcendent levels of reality, and I'm actually now starting to really believe that the brain is not the source of consciousness, is not really who we are, but it's more like a radio tuner for something way bigger.
Are these experiences, spiritual experiences or otherwise, are they created by physiological processes, or is the brain itself responding to something that's going on? And the fact that somebody may actually find a way of turning on their brain to spiritual experiences, again, I mean, I'm not sure that that necessarily diminishes the reality or the realness of what those experiences are about. If the pharmacology or the psychopharmacology of psychedelic experiences turned out to be essentially the same as religious or spiritual experiences, it would help us to understand where these experiences are occurring within the human brain.